King Tijara. King Tijara. Tijara took the throne in 3219 at the age of 114. Though his father was considered to be an extremely decent and honorable man, especially in his later years, Tijara did not follow in those footsteps. It's said that he was an intelligent man, but that he used that intelligence and cleverness for his own personal gain throughout his life. In fact, rumors say that Tijara succeeded rather well at convincing his own father that he was the perfect choice for the throne, when most believed that one of his two younger brothers would have done much more for his people than he ever did. If there was one thing that seemed to direct Tijara's reign, it was his own personal gain. He was known as a masterful pretender long after his death, while those who saw through his lies during his reign were few and far between. Due to Tijara's nature, there was not much good that can be said about his time on the throne. The palace underwent a major renovation in 3271, and in 3279, the Writers' Guild presented Tijara with the King's Age, one of the most beautiful and amazing ages that had ever been written up to that point. It was later discovered that Tijara had ordered that the age written by two writers who eventually died, quote-unquote, of mysterious illnesses after their work was done. Ew, that's so that they could write an age for no one else. Tijara was married officially to one woman, although there were many rumors of multiple other companions. As it turned out, Tijara was also known within his inner circle to be an extremely jealous man, especially of his wife and the other woman in his life. In 3285, Tijara's oldest brother was imprisoned for the creation of illicit ages, a crime he vehemently denied to the time of his imprisonment. Tijara expressed great sorrow at the sentencing, although it was later learned, well after Tijara's death, that the crime had been a setup as punishment for what Tijara had perceived as lustful looks from his brother. In 3298, a guild master of the Guild of Miners was killed in a freak accident while inspecting the progress of the new tunnels. Again, it was later learned that Tijara had ordered the man killed due to a relationship that he had many years earlier with one of Tijara's lovers, long before Tijara had ever met her. Though Tijara's reign was viewed as fairly repulsive by most, it is important to note that for the first time in their history, the people of Denis remained strong and focused, even under the leadership of such a poor king. The word and teachings of Tavar stayed in their hearts, and they focused on their personal lives, and, if they were pleasing to Yavo, more than their king. If there is anything good to be said of Tijara, it's that he did not destroy the fragile condition of his people. Religion was not important to him, and thus, though he never did anything to encourage his people one way or the other, he did nothing to prevent those who wished to believe in certain ways from doing so. Tijara died in 3422 at the age of 317 and left the throne to his third son. The third is probably in quotation marks because it's debatable if he had children with several other people. Though Tijara claimed that the boy was born of his wife, there were quite a few rumors that the boy was actually the first son of one of Tijara's younger maidens. The rumor was never proved either way, as both his wife and the maiden passed away 2 years after the boy was born. Though officially Tijara had 3 sons, it's possible that he actually fathered 12 and 7 daughters, an exorbitant number for a Denis. Excerpted from the Grandmaster Gerens of the Guild of Writers' private journal, from The Lost Son, written by the prophetess Tylesi in 3422, from Grandmaster Gerens' private journal, from The Lasting Impact, written by the grandson of Tavar, Ilim, in 3576. It should be noted that most of these facts were not public information until long after Tijara's death. For the most part, the Denis honestly believed that Tijara was a decent king. Though some began to judge the reign of Tijara by his son, it was not until much later, when the truths were revealed, that the public's opinion of Tijara truly changed. Well, let's see what Tijara's potentially illegitimate son did with the kingdom. King Tiamel. took the throne in 3422 at the young age of 39. Like his father, TML's major concern was personal pleasure. Unlike his father, it seems to be not nearly as clever at hiding his true intentions from his people. In spite of TML's inability to lead, a few worthwhile historic events were carried out during his reign. First was the construction of the Stone Eater in 3469. Though TML really had nothing to do with the Guild of Miners' first colossal tunneling machine, he claimed quite a bit of the credit at its christening. Grand Master Nauman of the Guild of Miners, who did spearhead the effort, was irate at the lack of mention of his own name during the speech and made his thoughts public in the days that followed. Like his father, TML carried out relations with quite a few different women besides his wife Shama, whom he married in 3477. Unlike his father, it was said of TML that these women, including his wife, much more easily persuaded him. Oh, so maybe they made him do things? Public opinion clearly believed that Shama was a rather incredible woman. Why she stayed with him through his entire life, even though he had well-publicized affairs, was not clear. Some said that she used TML and the marriage for her own benefit, as she definitely had his ear. Others said it was because she was a faithful follower of Yavo and believed that the promise that she had made to him was not meant to be broken. Regardless, it seems clear that Shama was an intelligent woman who, though it was never publicly stated, for all practical purposes held the throne from 3477 on. In 3500, women became eligible for minor guild education. Though there had been women participation in the minor guilds before that, actresses, etc., they'd never been officially recognized as members of those guilds. Though there was a push to allow women to join the major guilds as well as the minor, Shama herself gave a strong case not to allow such an event to happen in 3523. She strongly disagreed with women being in governmental positions, a seemingly ironic view as she was basically the king of Dini at the time of her speech. Regardless, she argued that women had much more important duties, including the guiding of children. The push for such allowances seemed to have faded away over the years following her speech. In 3574, Shama gave birth to TML's first son, at least that the public knew of. For the remaining years of TML's reign, Shama focused on raising her son, whom she vowed would not be the same kind of man as his father. A daughter was born 30 years later, and Shama raised her with equal resolve. Again, though the people were not led well, they remained strong in their beliefs and purposes, somewhat ignoring the bad the bad leadership of TML, and instead focusing on the high example of his wife. TML passed away from an unknown disease in 3654 at the age of 271, leaving the throne to his firstborn son. This was written by the prophetess Athsheba in private journals from Shama, written by Lalan in 388-90. Oh, Lalan again. Shama's words were spoken to the council as they debated whether or not to allow women into the major guilds, from the lasting impact, written by the grandson of Tavar. All right, who's the next king? Oh, his son. King Kedri. Hey, we recognize Kedri's name. King Kedri. Kedri took the throne in 3654 at the age of 80. Kedri himself was seen by many as a testament to the type of woman his mother had been. Oh, okay. For a moment I thought they were saying that Kedri was a woman. No. Kedri was upstanding in the same way that his mother was. The day of Kedri's coronation was the proudest moment of Shama's life. She often said, up until the day she passed away in 3689. Whether or not they agreed with Kedri's decisions, it seems that most did, there was seemingly hardly a single Dini who did not greatly respect and care for Kedri. He was a king for the people, and, most historians agree, was the most popular king of Dini history, besides the Great King. Kedri led a number of small proposals that often benefited the lower classes. At the same time, it seems, he assured the higher classes that their proposals were the right thing to do. Up until that point, the island had basically been set up for the elite. It was Kedri who established the district of Shamathen and later changed to Karathen, and as a more affordable residential district. Kedri also donated his own Age of the Kings, written during the reign of his grandfather, to the Common Library. He directed money to massive renovation projects throughout Denis, including further additions to the Great Temple, the Opera House, and further renovations to Bellari, the deteriorating district that Rakeri had started years earlier. In the numerous books and journals written about Kedri, it is said that he often walked the streets of Denis and attended events with the rest of his people, as though he were one of them. He was married in 3686 at a public ceremony that was open to all who wished to attend. As one writer had said of the event, if you did not want to be there, you did not want to be Denis. Kedri eventually passed away in 3903 at the age of 329, leaving the throne to his firstborn son. Oh yeah, Kedri was the one that would walk around and be like, where are my people? Where are my people? And then he would build new things so that even the poor can enjoy what he did. King Lemeshal took the throne in 3903 at the age of 100. Lemeshal had been fairly involved in the minor guild of actors, although it was said that was especially interested Lemeshal was illusion. Up until that point, there had been a few different magic clubs, although nothing official. So in 3961, Lemeshal, with quite a bit of trouble, forced the establishment of the minor guild of illusionists. Oh, so he wanted to make a specific guild just for magicians? It was not a guild that most found necessary, but Lemeshal argued neither was the guild of actors, painters, or musicians. It was entertainment, of which illusion was a valid form. Ironically, it was later discovered that the establishment of the guild was an illusion in and of itself. While the guild was debated, Lemeshal established an undercover intelligence force to keep track of the more dangerous factions and subgroups of Denis. They were a highly secretive group, of which the public had little or no knowledge until years later. And so, with the confirmation of the Guild of Illusionists, the Relima, literally translated as the unseen, were also established. That's the Relima. Oh, yeah, I used to call it Relima, but I think it's the Relima. That sounds better. Though the previous few kings had been fairly focused on Denis and expanding their own culture and territory, Lemeshal again looked toward the outside cultures in a manner that had not been seen since Hinash. In 3975, he remarried, as his first wife had passed away at a young age, to an outsider. Unlike Hinash, who had also married an outsider, Lemeshal and his new wife bore a son, his first, 20 years later, in 3995, and another son in 4014. For the first time, the Denis were truly confronted with their views on outside cultures, and arguments were said to have started as soon as Lamash's son was born as to whether or not he would be allowed to someday rule as king. Unfortunately, though Lemeshal led quite a few efforts to supply better lives for other cultures, along with freer trade and sharing of resources with other ages, the remaining years of his reign were dominated by whether or not his son would be allowed to reign. To Lemeshal's credit, though he could have forced his will concerning his son upon his people, he never did. If his son were to eventually reign, he said, it will only be over a people who want him to. In 4030, the council decided that a king had to be of pure Denis blood. Lemeshal signed the decision into law the following year. When he died in 4083, he left the throne to the youngest child of his cousin, whose mother had been a younger sister to his father, Kedri. Taken from the speech of the council arguing for the establishment of the king, Lemeshal did not need council approval to establish the guild, although the king's preferred council approval. It was said later that Lemeshal purposely wanted the debates to take place as a distraction. Huh, that's interesting. King Ishak. Ishak took the throne in 4083 at the age of 85. His grandmother had been Shama, and of Ishak it was often said that he ran his throne almost exactly as his uncle Kedri had. He was another of the people's kings and refused to separate himself from his people or view himself as a higher level as those he served. It seems a king with such an attitude was hard not to like, and his popularity was close to that of Kedries. Like Le Michal, he focused on the involvement of non-Denis and their importance to the Denis culture and expansion. His powerful words of equality between the Denis and non-Denis were truly put to the test in 4103. Eshek and his wife had been touring a food facility run by natives on the age of Yemas, and as it turned out, the party was ambushed and Eshek's wife was taken by a group of natives who managed, using Denis linking books, to easily escape before Eshek or his guards could react. As word leaked out of the event, the words animals and uncivilized and primitive were used to describe those on the other worlds in ways that were not used since the Pento War. Eshek fought the people's new perception and argued that not all outside cultures should be judged on a few radicals. His words, however, were seen as empty by much of the public as he waited for word on his wife. Word finally came. The Yemas wanted their own worlds to rule, as they felt Denis ruled them. They had specific demands for the kind of worlds, many of which were impossible, as they had no concept of the art of writing. Unless they were given the 3 worlds they demanded, Eshek's wife was to be executed. Many viewed the Eshek as faithful study of history, and in particular of the Pento War. Because of his knowledge of the history and his belief that the integrity of Yemas, was fairly convinced that it was not the Yemas who wanted the books, but some small faction of Denis who was secretly directing them. Rumors said that he had been fairly convinced of the particular faction that was doing it. As was in the case of the Pento War, it had not been the Pento who were to blame, but the judges who had wrongly sought power. Given Eshek's apparent distrust of some within his own people more than those who were not Denis, he had been a strong supporter of the Rel-Yama, and as it turned out, it was their information that saved him. There were a number of groups who felt as though Denis should be completely sealed off from other cultures. One in particular had been especially vocal about their opinions, especially while Eshek's wife had been held captive, using the tragedy to further their own cause. It was to this group Eshek apparently directed the Rel-Yama, ordering them to uncover any information they could find. 3 days later, Eshek sent out word that he had no intention of giving Yemas the worlds that they had asked for. Hours later, Rel-Yama informants followed 2 members of the faction Eshek had suspected to an illegal age where his wife was imprisoned. Once the public received word that it had once again been their own people directing the operation, records indicate that they were greatly dismayed. Plans were uncovered that indicated that the faction was to kill his wife no matter whether the ages were given or not, to only prove further that the outsiders would not be trusted. In fact, it seems as though the public was quickly learning that it was their own blood who could not be trusted. As Rena-Ref and the Great King had often said, it was a great power that they had been entrusted with, and it is our own hearts that must be watched, a temptation too great to be resisted without strict rules or willing hearts. As a result, there was a great push for more strict guidelines for interaction with other ages, as well as rules for the ages themselves. They sought the rules not because of the other cultures being savages, but because our own culture could not be trusted to deal with them honorably. Eshek passed away in 4291 at the age of 293, leaving the debates to his firstborn son. Taken from the City Guard records, taken from transcripts of Grandmaster Jockin's of the Guild of Writers' speech to Eshek. Depending on sources, 2 different groups are credited with the kidnapping, although Rel-Yama records indicate that it was a group known as the Blood of Yavo. Other records indicate it was a group known as the Light of Denis. Taken from the Book 1 of the Great King, from How They Came, a detailed look at what started the Myst War by Jamin. So, yeah, that Myst War keeps getting referred to. I wonder where that's going to be. All right, next book. King Loshemanesh. That's quite the name. King Loshemanesh took the throne in 4291 at the age of 123. Though Loshemanesh's reign was relatively short, it was believed that he made the most of the years that he was given. Lo Shemanesh had been seen firsthand the effects of too much interaction with other cultures, and because of that, he held firmly to his views, disagreeing with what was becoming the majority view of Denis. He often pointed out, his father also had, that before the Penta War, strict regulations had existed on interaction with other cultures, and it did nothing to stop the judges from their writings. Lo Shemanesh himself stated, "Those who wish to take advantage of outside ages and peoples cannot be stopped. We must first be listened to within Denis, not forced to make such extreme measures. When extreme measures are taken, the consequences must be increased." In 4305, law was passed stating that the creation or trading of illicit ages was punishable by permanent imprisonment in a solitary prison age, a fate that some said was worse than death. In 4307, Lo Shemanesh passed, barely, another law stating that any Denis who coerced an outsider to commit a crime, no matter what the crime, was also punishable by permanent imprisonment. While the laws were passed, Lo Shemanesh encouraged further interaction with the other cultures, while continuing to argue interaction itself was not the problem. However, it seems as though many failed to see his stance and still pushed for stricter measures on the Guild of Writers and the complete sealing off of any interaction with outsiders. In 4334, the age of Traces, or Traces? Probably Traces, a major mining age, was halfway destroyed because of the mistake of a native running Denis machines that had been established there. Families were forced to evacuate. In one particularly odd case, supposedly a child was born while the mother had been linking from Traces back to Denis. How did the child not get lost? Regardless, the destruction of the age was another cause of argument for those who wished to seal themselves off, and a case that Lo Shemanesh argued could have happened regardless of who was running the machine. Sadly, in 4438, Lo Shemanesh was assassinated by the same faction who had kidnapped his mother years earlier, making his life an example of what he had often preached, that it was the Denis who had to change. If they did not, he had argued, problems would always exist, whether or not outsiders were involved. He left the throne to his first son of his younger brother, as he had no children of his own. Oh, the first son of his younger brother. So this was taken from the public speech explaining the signing of the laws. So this must be King G. King G. G took the throne in 4438 at the very young age of 36. The combination of an apparently immature and weak king, along with the tension that was growing within Denis over the outsiders and religious principles, went down in history as a bad one. At the start of his reign, government records say G was overtaken with his new palace life and the luxuries that it afforded him. He seemed much more concerned with what kind of food he would be served for breakfast and whether or not Denis would pull back all of its people who were living on outside ages, as some were suggesting, wrote one anonymous author. Because of his apparent lack of concern over the real issues, it was the grandmasters who quickly became most frustrated with G. It was said by a few grandmasters in private journals that G would wholeheartedly agree with them while they presented their strategies and plans, and then agree with their challengers an hour later. Ugh, that's terrible. The indecision by G made for little evidence of progress and complete frustration for most of Denis. For the first time in many years, the signs of division began to appear as they had during the 2500s. The once unified religious belief showed signs of splitting. The once unified classes began to separate into rich and poor, and the once confident rulers of the worlds began to wonder whether they should rule even themselves. Could rule even themselves. Adding to the confusion, there were words of the Watcher. The Watcher, as he had come to be called, was the child who had been born between ages. Whoa! That was the Watcher? The one the baby that had been born of the woman who had been giving birth while linking to another age? And the ability to see beyond time, past, present, and future. In 4500, he wrote words. a 625-line volume describing his visions of Dini. Much of the book dealt with the great destruction of Dini that would one day occur, and the signs that it would come with that destruction. Many claim that the book was seizing upon the chaos of the day and dismissed it as rubbish, while others seemed to be rather intrigued. Also in 4500, Guildmaster Kenneth of the Guild Legislators brought forth a proposal that would allow the use of private education separate from the guilds. Although many seemed frightened of the idea, as education and the guilds had always been thought of as inseparable, the proposal eventually passed by a slim margin. G seemingly had little to say on the proposal one way or the other. G was married in 4502 to Milani, a woman who had been married 3 previous times. It was G's first, and the prophetess advising him had strongly spoken against it. The marriage lasted 25 years before ending, and marked the first time any king had divorced one of his wives. G remarried in 4565 to a woman 100 years younger, something culturally accepted. It was the rumors that she was the daughter of the Watcher that had created problems. She denied the claim, but did show quite a bit of interest in his writings and convinced G to do the same. The marriage lasted until 4645, when G's wife vanished. Some said outsiders had taken her, since nothing had been resolved concerning them. Others said G had murdered her. And others said that she had returned to her father, the Watcher, even though the Watcher had died in 4606. G's final wife was one of his own prophetesses he had sought to for advice, marking yet another first for the king. The first two were married until G's death. The two were married until G's death in 4692. He left the throne to the third son of a close friend. He was 290 years old. To sum up G's reign, one author wrote, "There was a collective sigh of relief throughout the cavern on the day he finally left us." As spoken by Kenneth during the debates on the council in 4500, it seems private education never really received near the admiration and respect from the public, and thus was never truly successful. Common among those still wanting more strict guidelines pertaining to outside involvement, one of G's gardeners claimed he witnessed the murder with his own eyes. The murder of the wife. Though the Watcher was believed to have died in 4606, there were numerous rumors of people claiming to have seen him and talked with him. Taken more recently discovered manuscript that apparently was never published. All right, so that must be his friend's son, but there's nothing for him. King Yabelshan. Or is it Yableshan? Probably Yableshan. Took the throne in 4843 at the age of 109. Though most commentaries say that he held to the same beliefs as his father, it seems as though he was not nearly as strong and thus did not carry the level of respect that his father had, a character trait that some of the more violent factions preyed upon. Demoth had managed to refocus the Dini to a large... Wait, Demoth must be the one that we don't have the book for. I think we had read about him before. However, the new factions who still desired to make their case were able to make Yableshan's reign an unpleasant one. In 4865, the Blood of Yavo kidnapped Yableshan's first son from the Guild of Chemists. For goodness sake, why can't they get rid of the Blood of Yavo faction? They keep kidnapping people. In a letter, the faction stated that they would kill the king's son if one of their leaders was not released. Yableshan ordered that Rel-Yama to find his son, but they were apparently unable to do so. Later it was discovered that a key member of the Rel-Yama had joined the Blood of Yavo and was aiding them. Feeling forced, Yableshan gave in to the demands and released the prisoner that they had asked for. The body of his son appeared on the steps of the palace a few days later. They didn't give it to him alive. Well, him alive. The death of Yableshan's son, along with newfound evidences of a mole within the Rel-Yama, further separated Dini into two sides. Those who wished to end outside intervention were becoming stronger, publicly raising their cause almost daily. Those who followed the majority were growing angrier and less tolerable of those who did not. As a result, there was little doubt that there were very few Dini left who fell into the middle ground. There were even less, including Gablashan, who could bridge the two sides. Yablashan, in an apparent attempt to divert his people's attention from the brewing wars, decided in 4889 to announce remodels for all of the 18 major guilds. It was the first of its kind since Dini had been founded and warmly embraced by the guilds. Under the announcement, Yablashan changed some of the original restrictions of Rhinareth, offering the guilds more liberty in the structures that they could build. In 4901, Yablashan stated that his plans for a new common library located directly within the Vaman district of Dini, a middle-class district. In 4910, he announced plans for a new park to be built in Naref Island. In 4914, 3 new recreation ages were placed within the park as gifts from the Guild of Writers in order to celebrate the completion of their new guild. The diversions seemed to do their job until 4954, when an explosion occurred on the age of Mianus, killing 400 outsiders and 78 Dini. It was apparently the result of a bad combination of gases. One, the Dini had brought with them, and the other was already in existence on Mianus. Another push had begun to seal themselves from outside influence. The Rel Yama, who were usually counted on in these situations, apparently had no information as to the facts of the explosion. They were still apparently in the midst of their own chaos, trying to discover the mole. There were some who thought the explosion had been a setup, but it could not be proven. In 5043, Yablashan placed a man by the name of Faresh in charge of the Guild of Illusionists. His first mission, as ordered by Yablashan himself, was to find whoever was destroying the Rel Yama's ability to gain knowledge. Though most believed that Faresh had been more interested in actual illusions than the unseen, he was also known as an extremely intelligent man and immediately put to action a plan to clean up the Rel Yama. He also began construction of a house on one of the private islands of the cavern that blatantly demonstrated his love for illusions. Yablashan died in 5081 at the age of 347. He never had any other children after his son was killed, and left the throne to his younger brother-in-law, his younger sister's husband. Goshen had been imprisoned in a prison book 50 years earlier by Damath. From How They Came, a detailed look into what started the Metis War by Jamin. Mianus was well known for its production of mining machinery, from Revealing the Unseen, written by Bisharin in 5999. Oh, only a couple more books. King Emin. King Emin. Emin took the throne in 5081 at the age of 150. 2 years after his coronation, 2 members of the Rel Yama mysteriously disappeared and were never seen of again. Never heard of? I think heard of would have been the right word for that. Fresh became a silent hero in the key members of the government, and the factions were again quieted, knowing that they were being watched. Key members of the government were often seen at parties taking place in Fresh's mansion, and rumors of puzzle rooms and secret halls grew throughout the city. The house itself, located on Katha Island, was becoming one of the more talked about buildings in the entire cavern. Maybe that's why everyone likes puzzles in Myst. In 5093, 2 members of the cult known as the One Dini were proven guilty for the explosion that had occurred years earlier in Mianus. Both were permanently imprisoned. At the same time, Amen, along with the Guild of Caterers, announced the completion of 2 new food ages, one of which was run solely by outsiders, and produced new food sources that had never been tasted in Dini before. The popularity of Faresh's mansion caused others, mainly elite, to request permission to build in the many islands that surrounded the city proper. In 5095, Amen decided to sell many of the islands that up until that point had been government property. Records indicate the sale of over 23 of the islands in 1 year to private citizens who could afford their heavy price tag. In 5102, disaster hit the family of Faresh in the mysterious death of his daughter. Official city guard records say that she awoke in the middle of the night claiming to see spirits and jumped from her bedroom window to her death. Rumors abounded as to the true cause. Some thought the house was haunted, while others, mainly government, thought that she might have been a target of factions. Perhaps the most damaging rumors dealt with the Watcher. In words, he had described a similar event taking place, and such a public event caused many to begin to study his words again. It was the beginning of a philosophical chaos yet again. Faresh left the house a year after the death of his daughter, claiming to be unable to live with the memories of his daughter. The house was given completely, although no one knew it at the time, to the Relyama. Rumors of dark shadows in the windows and boats silently rowing toward the island fueled the idea that the house was haunted. It appears that after the Relyama controlled the house, Amen himself often made visits, recommending a number of renovations, tunnels, etc., that he thought would aid them in their cause. In 5202, a public ferry system was approved by Amen, offering much more frequent access between the island, the city proper, and the surrounding smaller islands. One of the islands Amen gave to the minor guild of artists, musicians, and actors, who turned it into a cultural center. In later years, the center often hosted outside concerts, plays, etc., all on the water. 4 years before Amen's death, the Guild of Stonemasons announced Duratheni, the substance that had been produced in a laboratory for the first time and was the start of much improved construction techniques. Amen died in 5240 at the age of 309, leaving the throne to his firstborn son. It was not public information. However, the history of the moles was well known in the highest circle of government, from Haunted by Her Cries. Shimas and Herias became known as a large variety of fruits and vegetables that naturally grew on each. From Haunted by Her Cries, written by Hagen in 5120, Words has numerous references to dreams and mourning in the streets, which many interpreted to describe the death of Faresh's daughter. Duratheni was a lightweight stone, which proved to be extremely strong. Okay, so we don't see what happened to him, but we have a King Adesh. King Adesh. Adesh took the throne in 5549 at the age of 49. Though Adesh was young, it was also said that he was mature for his age and took quite a bit of advice from the prophetess Trisari, who had also served his uncle. Adesh was apparently a religious man, but not an especially accepting one. The prophet Gish arrived on the scene in 5574 and began preaching similar to what Tavar had done years ago. Unlike Tavar, Gish praised the word of Yahweh, but nothing else. The great king, he said, was a farce, as was Tavar. He denounced his people for claiming that Tegan was more important than following Yahweh's commands. Was that marriage? I think so. He declared that Tavar and the great king had used Tegan as an excuse to do whatever they wanted, and it was time to focus on Yahweh's commands again. One of these, he added, was no interaction with outsiders. Though Gish was not the first to say such things, for some reason the public came in droves to listen to him, making him an extremely popular figure. Adesh denounced Gish's words at every level and arrested him numerous times, and by such actions only encouraged Gish, arguably making the impact on society even larger than what otherwise would have been. Gish continued preaching until, in an apparent fit of rage, Adesh ordered the Relyama to kill him. It was said later the decision was most likely the worst of his reign. The Relyama succeeded in their mission in 5675. There was an extreme outrage at the king as well as the official church. Exactly as Gish had taught, Adesh had justified killing a man, strictly against the laws of Yahweh, because he felt that there was something more important that was justified because of Tegan. Gish became a martyr, and those who followed him increased. Adesh made attempts to draw his people back, but it was too late. There were apparently few people, even ardent followers of the great king, who would agree with his decision. In fact, it was rumored that it was one of Adesh's close advisors who killed him in 5701 at the young age of 201. The throne was left to his firstborn son, Lanarin. Yeah, the word literally means to love with the mind, implying to have a close personal knowledge of another person or a certain case Yahweh. It had been taught that in order to gain access to the perfect age, which is like their heaven, Yavo only required such a relationship and nothing else. From Yavo alone, written by Gish, taken from the private journals of Trisari. Many think it was fact, Trisari who convinced Adesh to make the order. From the followers, written by Minesh. Only 3 more books. King Lanaran. Lanaran took the throne in 5701 at the age of 98. Lanaran had not been close to his father, and as a result was not much like him. It was rumored that it was because of Lanaran that Adesh's own advisor had killed Adesh. He knew Lanaran would give the people what they wanted. Lanaran immediately denounced the actions of his father in killing Gish and informed the public of the existence of the Rel Yama, their involvement in the death of Gish, and promised to rid them from all government activities. The announcement was a shock to the public, and a huge blow to those who had served the Rel Yama. Most ended up living in hidden private ages, while a few were murdered after their years of service to the government. The loss of the Rel Yama again gave the factions hope that they would be able to carry out their demonstrations again. However, Lanaran also promised to rid outsider involvement, meaning that factions had no need for such acts. It was believed that the promise was not one that Lanaran necessarily meant to keep, but instead one that he intended to pretend he was trying to meet to keep the factions happy. He also believed wholeheartedly in the plan to build a tunnel to the island, and was able to push it through in 5714, as Meta Men had not been able to do so. While Stone Tooth was busy digging, Lanaran promised that its next task would be to continue expansion by the Asham N district, with eventual plans to create new residential and cultural districts. Lanaran also ordered the major guilds to begin work on replacing all the ages that required outsider involvement. He demanded ages that would carry out the same tasks, but without outside involvement. Most guild masters knew the plan would take years and years, although they did not agree with it, agreed to attempt it. In 5721, new techniques were developed to incorporate structural reinforcement in extrusion-based construction, some that would aid in construction of the districts Lanaran had promised. In 5734, the tunnel connecting the island with the city proper was cancelled. Stonetooth had been working on it for over 20 years, but the guild masters were already required by Lanaran to replace a huge number of ages. They were not about to connect their homes to the island with the city proper. Lanaran agreed, and there was further concerns that such construction would affect the lake level or even the algae within the lake. Oh yeah, the algae, I think, is what's creating that ominous orange glow. Instead, Stonetooth was ordered to begin clearing out more space next to the Ashamen district. In 5856, construction was begun in the new Lanaran district. Stonetooth was ordered to begin further exploration of the cavern by way of new tunnels. In 5902, the guilds announced their new ages to replace some of the ones being used by outsiders. The announcement meant little, except to have the fractions believe that eventually outside involvement would be finished. In 5903, it marked the first inhabitants of the Lanaran district, most manual laborers who worked in the adjoining Ashamen. The Rel Yama were officially finished with their work in 5986. The announcement was fairly quiet, as most of their work had ceased long before that. In 5999, Lanaran passed away at a very old age of 396. He left the throne to his fifth and youngest son. From Revealing the Unseen, written by Bisharin. From the private journals of Grandmaster Cayman of the Guild of Legislators, The Lost Tunnel, written by Lashem. The environmental damage claimed by Lanaran and Denis environmentalists was never proven. Most of it agreed that it was easy way out for Lanaran, who then did not have to admit that he was bullied by the Grandmasters who lived on the island. Oh, the Grandmasters who lived on the island didn't want the island to be connected to Denis because then other people could gain access to it. 3 of the new ages were for food, while the 4th was meant to replace one of the major manufacturing ages. In reality, none of them were ever used to the extent of the ages that they were replacing. And there's nothing here. Maybe those are the books that were being written but hadn't been approved. King Jaren. Jaren took the throne in not 600, 6,284 at the age of 83. He was apparently much like his father, more interested in keeping everyone happy than declaring one side of debates concerning philosophy, advancement, or outside involvement right or wrong. As a result, though the people were satisfied, there was further division among them. The elite and poor became more divided, and though there was quite a bit of new construction, and renovation in both the elite and poor districts, there was nothing done to join them. For some reason, Jaren was obsessed with expansion and exploration of the cavern. There were rumors of his obsession stemmed from the Watcher prophecies. One in particular stated, "Because of the tunnels, Denis has changed forever." Jaren never said what drove him throughout his reign, but he pushed the Guild of Miners, mechanists, engineers, and surveyors to work together to create new drills and machinery. He had great plans to widen Rudenna Passage, which, when opened, would allow for further expansion. In 6,430, the announcement came. Rockbiter and the Burrower were both christened in a great ceremony and then immediately put to work. Stonetooth and Stone Eater were used for further city expansion. The once violent factions that had existed there, for the most part, were dissolving. Many of their members were seemingly beginning to call themselves followers of Yavo, as Gish had been. Though they did not support outside involvement, they believed it to be best to obey Yavo and hope for a peaceful solution. Though Jaren carried out few meetings with the factions, the dissolution of the factions had little to do with his policies or leadership. Regardless, he was able to focus on mining efforts without consequences. It was a luxury the previous kings had not been afforded, and the main reason some of the greatest expansion of Denis history was under Jaren. Jaren himself died in 6,498 at the age of 900. That would make him extremely old, of 297. Though he did not see the completion of the expansion of the Rudenna Passage, he never saw the new areas to which the passage led. He left the throne to his third son. All right, and this is the last book. This is his third son. King Rikuth. Why would you... Kuth is like the Jakuth. Why would you want to name your kid... I don't know. King Rikuth. Yeah, it sounds so similar to their devil deity. I think that's really weird. Rikuth took the throne in 6,498 at the age of 56. Though young, he had two older brothers and a sister with whom it was said he often consulted. They each understood the logic of giving the throne to the youngest son. It guaranteed more time on the throne for the individual, and worked well with their younger brother, who, as no other family member had done previously. Rikuth's first major decision came in 6,510 when the new cavern was found by expeditions that led by Rockbiter and the Burrower. There were calls to expand the city, but Rikuth was apparently unconvinced it was a smart plan. His older brother, who happened to be the guild master of the Guild of Surveyors, agreed to study the cavern extensively, and Rikuth's promised to make a decision upon reading the results of the study. In the meantime, Rikuth married in 6,556 to a woman named Yeesha. Her father was Grand Master of the Guild of Chemists and a strong believer in Gish and the fallacy of the Great King. Though Yeesha had some influence in Rikuth, he continued in the tradition of his father, never publicly stating his views in philosophy. However, she had much more influence on the three sons that they would eventually have together, including the youngest, Karath. It was her influence that would change Denis forever. In 6,601, extremely detailed reports, structural analysis, water supply, rock type, etc., came back informing Rikuth that though the newly discovered cavern was habitable, it would be very expensive to build in. Rikuth made the decision, after conferring with his advisors, that Stonetooth, along with a new Rockbiter, would begin digging out more of the city proper into the cave wall for expansion, while Burrower and Stone Eater would continue to tunnel past the cavern. In 6,676, Rikuth met with the leaders to discuss the involvement of outsiders. Though there had been no major incidents for hundreds of years, it was still an issue to be discussed. In the meetings, it became apparent through Rikuth's understanding of the reasons for wishing to close down the interaction with outsiders. It was a ridiculous thought. Their contribution to Denis culture, art, construction, technology, and resources was immeasurable. Unless there were grand reasons not to, there was no way, he argued, that he would ever force strict resolutions regarding the outsiders. In his older years, it appeared as though Rikuth became tired of Yeesha and her views and opinions. She was expelled from the palace, along with Karath in 6700. It was well known that Karath was a model of his mother's thoughts, and Rikuth could hardly stand him. Though Rikuth had chosen an older brother of Karath to be king, his thoughts were changed. As the legends of old, Rikuth was on his own deathbed staring out towards the arch, and he saw his son, Karath, sailing through it. He was riding a boat in the shape of a massive lizard, standing proudly on its prow, and had come home to announce the death of his mother. As he sailed through the arch, Rikuth apparently felt the hand of Yavo directing him to make Karath the next king of Dini. By the end of Rikuth's reign, the city was larger than ever, the classes were more divided than ever, and the religious beliefs were as divided as ever. Though there were not a large variety of beliefs, there was no clear majority of people who believed in any one thing. Rikuth passed away in 6731 at the age of 289, leaving the throne to his third son, Karath. He left him a city that was larger than it had ever been, and fairly evenly divided in its views of the future. Years later, it would be a forceful argument for council ruling. From The Last King, written by Yamas in 7002, From How They Came, a detailed look at what started in the Myst War by Jamin, written in 7201, From The Last King, written by Yamas in 7002. Yeah, so they were going about Karath. I think Karath was the one that had proposed the council system. That's very interesting. Oh, and we have a way to get back here, hopefully. Oh. It was a big loop around. I think we're back at the start. Ah, so this is the town square. Is that a path? It looks like a path. Huh. Ah, what is that? I'd love to know, but it's one of those areas that's just blocked off. Yeah, so that was pretty much the history of Dini. And I think I've been all around the town. I should probably check out those interesting linking books, the ones that were in that one region. I can actually probably access them through the bridge that's down that way. Yeah, that right over there. Yep, so I'll go back down this and check to see if maybe I have new locations to go to. And then after that, I think I have an idea as to what I need to do with those pellets. Everyone keeps mentioning the number 625. 625 is that special number of the Watcher. And I'm wondering if it was also shown in the diagrams. The character doesn't really like going downstairs. So what I'm wondering is, maybe I need to wait 625 seconds. Oh, that's going to be another 15-minute wait. Maybe I have to wait again. Yep, I'll go in here. Maybe I have to wait again in order to maybe see that pellet drop from the sky. Maybe it's just a matter of waiting. Yeah. Before I go back to Relto, I'll just take a look at this. See all the new places that we have. Yeah. So we have the Palace Alcove, the Library Courtyard, the Concert Hall Foyer, Dakota Alley. Now, these symbols that you click on here, those are supposed to erase them, which means that whatever you do inside it gets reset. So I'm wondering if that means that these places have puzzles or things inside them. Well, I'll always be able to get back there. So, time to call it a night. And I will get back to more adventures in Myst Uru later.